At a quiet cafe, blind veteran Alex and his German Shepherd Maximus encounter three intimidating bikers. While Alex remains unaware of the danger, Maximus's demeanor instantly changes. Rigid posture, alert eyes, muscles tensed for action. This isn't random harassment. The lead biker shares a dark history with the former police K9, a connection that's about to erupt into violence when they follow Alex home. Will Maximus's extraordinary instincts and unwavering loyalty be enough to protect his owner from a vengeful criminal determined to settle an old score? Let's begin. The sky over Riverdale was crystal clear, not a cloud in sight. The morning sun gilded the treetops and pavement, creating a rare tranquil scene. Outside the Sunrise Cafe, the outdoor tables were nearly full with customers enjoying their morning beverages. Sitting in the quietest corner of the outdoor area was Alex Thorne, a blind man in his early 40s with dark hair streaked with silver at the temples. Beside him, lying in a vigilant posture, was Maximus, a German Shepherd with sleek black and tan fur. Maximus was more than just a guide dog. His keen eyes and confident stance reflected his past working in a police K9 unit. The cafe owner, Elena Rodriguez, placed a steaming cappuccino in front of Alex and offered a warm smile. "Good morning, Alex. Beautiful day today," she said, then bent down to gently stroke Maximus's head. "And your knight in shining armor is as handsome as ever." Alex smiled, his pale blue eyes directed toward her voice. "Thank you, Elena. Maximus and I feel it's going to be a wonderful day." Elena looked at Maximus with affection. She had witnessed the bond between this man and dog grow over the past 3 years, ever since Alex began visiting the cafe each morning. Something about the way Maximus always positioned himself between Alex and the outside world moved her. "You know, I've never seen a dog as loyal as Maximus," she said softly. "He looks at you like you're his whole world." Alex nodded, his hand finding Maximus's fur. "We've been through a lot together, haven't we, buddy?" Maximus shifted slightly, as if understanding every word. The morning's peace was suddenly shattered by the roar of 3 heavy motorcycles. The rumbling engines caused many to turn their heads as 3 men pulled into a spot near the cafe. All wore black leather jackets with colorful patches and emblems, creating an intimidating image. The leader of the group, Ray Blackwood, was a tall man with a thick beard and black hair tied back. His loud laughter echoed across the area as he spoke with his 2 friends, Marcus and Darius. The 3 appeared relaxed, but there was something in the way they surveyed their surroundings, a vigilance and assessment that added an edge of tension. Maximus immediately recognized the change in the environment. The dog's ears stood erect, his body tensing in a state of alertness. Alex, though unable to see, also sensed the change in Maximus's behavior. "What is it, old friend?" Alex whispered, placing his hand on Maximus's neck. Maximus didn't respond, his eyes still following the 3 men approaching the outdoor seating area. Years working in the police force had taught Maximus how to assess potential threats, and his instincts were signaling alarm. Ray and his companions began walking between the tables, their eyes scanning each patron. When Ray spotted Alex and Maximus, he paused, his gaze fixed on the German Shepherd. "That's a big dog you've got there," Ray remarked, his voice deliberately louder than necessary. Maximus, still maintaining his position beside Alex, faced Ray. The dog's dark brown eyes didn't blink, as if reading every movement of the man. Ray chuckled, leaning forward as if testing Maximus's reaction. "Is he as smart as he looks?" he asked his friends, awkward laughter following. Marcus, the shortest of the 3, laughed weakly. "I doubt it. Just a guide dog, right?" Darius, the quietest of the group, merely shrugged. Something in Maximus's gaze made him uncomfortable. "I don't know, Ray," Darius said quietly. "This dog seems different." Ray ignored the warning, stepping closer to Alex's table. "Hey, buddy, does your dog bite?" His tone was playful, but there was a clear provocation. The atmosphere grew tense. Maximus remained motionless, but there was a subtle change in his posture, a silent warning that anyone familiar with dogs would recognize. Alex, unaware of the glances around him, asked in a calm voice, "Is there a problem?" Silence enveloped their table, contrasting with the noisy chatter around them. Maximus, a dog trained for high-pressure situations, knew how to remain calm until the right moment. Ray, realizing he wasn't getting the reaction he wanted, backed off slightly, but his laughter still rang out. Elena, serving a nearby table, noticed the tense situation. She set down her tray and slowly approached Alex's table. "Is there anything I can help you gentlemen with?" she asked, her tone polite but firm. Ray glanced at her, annoyance evident. "We're just getting acquainted with the dog, sweetheart. Is there a problem?" "If you'd like to order drinks, I'll serve you right away," Elena replied, her gaze unwavering. "Otherwise, perhaps you should let our customers enjoy their morning." Ray stared at her for a moment, then laughed coldly. "Fine, sweetheart. 3 dark beers. And don't rush." Elena nodded stiffly, turning away but keeping one eye on the group. Alex, still not fully aware of the situation, reached out to touch Maximus. "Are you okay, buddy?" he asked gently. Maximus moved slightly closer to Alex, but his eyes never left Ray, who was beginning to feel the weight of his actions. The atmosphere seemed to shift in the small outdoor area of the café. While Alex finished his coffee, Ray and his group's laughter grew louder, now tinged with a provocative tone. Maximus remained still by Alex's side, but anyone watching closely could see he was on full alert. His muscles were tense, and his eyes followed Ray's every move, as if anticipating something yet to come. He wasn't just a dog, he was a guardian, trained to protect at all costs. Ray, feeling like the center of attention, approached Alex's table. He seemed completely oblivious to the fact that other patrons were watching. "You've got a nice-looking dog here, don't you?" he said playfully, though with a faint hint of disdain. Alex gave a slight smile, trying to keep the situation light. "Thanks. Maximus is my best friend." "Maximus," Ray repeated, raising an eyebrow. "A Roman name, isn't it? The Romans called their supreme god Jupiter, not Maximus." Alex smiled politely. "Actually, Maximus in Latin means greatest. I thought the name suited his character." Ray frowned slightly, displeased at being corrected. He turned to Marcus and Darius, who were watching with amusement. "Listen to this. Our friend here knows Latin. Impressive." Ray's sarcastic tone didn't escape Maximus. The dog became more alert, his body tensing like a guitar string. Ray tilted his head, feigning curiosity. "Maximus, huh? A god's name. Let's see if he lives up to it." Before Alice could respond, Ray made a sudden move, reaching out to touch Maximus's snout. It was a gesture that might have seemed harmless to onlookers, but for Maximus, trained to detect threats, it was enough to trigger his instincts. The German Shepherd didn't attack, but took a step back, letting out a low warning growl. The tension around them thickened, and an uncomfortable silence fell over the area. "Easy there, boy," Ray said, raising his hands as if he were only joking, but there was a glint of challenge in his eyes. Alex, still not understanding what was happening, placed his hand on Maximus's neck, trying to calm him down. "Sorry if he scared you," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "Scared?" Ray laughed loudly, but there was tension in his tone. "I've faced much scarier things than a dog, my friend." Marcus snickered. "Remember that time in Sturgis? That pit bull nearly—" "Shut up!" Ray cut him off, clearly not wanting that story told. Darius, still silent, looked at Maximus with newfound respect. He had worked with canines in the military and recognized the signs of a professionally trained dog. "Ray," Darius spoke up, his voice low in warning, "this dog isn't the usual kind. Look at how he stands." Ray just laughed, but his pride seemed to have been hurt by the dog's reaction. He stepped back, but his friend started to tease him. "So, Ray, you're going to let a dog put you in your place?" That one sentence changed the mood. Ray, wanting to impress, looked back at Maximus with a smile full of intent. The leader of the group looked around and noticed that many people were watching the interaction, some even discreetly filming with their phones. Maybe that made him hesitate for a brief moment, but he wasn't the type to back down. "Relax, guys, it's just a dog," he said dismissively. But Maximus knew the difference between play and danger, and although Alex couldn't see it, he started to feel that something wasn't right. A veteran sitting nearby, James Whitaker, had been watching the situation with increasing concern. He had worked with service dogs during his time in the military and recognized the signs. He slowly stood up, ready to intervene if necessary. Elena was also watching from the bar, phone in hand, ready to call the police if the situation escalated. She had witnessed enough disturbances at the café to know when things were about to get out of hand. "Maximus, what's wrong?" Alex asked in a whisper. The German Shepherd just kept his eyes fixed on Ray, as if waiting for the next move. Ray took a few steps back, but it wasn't a retreat. His friends kept laughing, egging him on with taunts, and it seemed to fuel the biker's already bruised pride. He stopped for a moment, staring at Maximus as if daring the dog to make a move. The tension in the air was almost tangible. Alex, still unaware of the malicious looks or the looming threat, tried to lighten the mood with a comment. He doesn't like it when people come on too strong. Maybe that scared him. But Ray ignored the comment. He glanced at his friends, then at the people around him, as if looking for approval for what he was about to do. With a cold smile, he took a step toward Maximus, extending his hand again. Maximus, still seated, growled low, a clear warning to anyone who knew how to read it. The sound was almost inaudible, but powerful enough to make the onlookers flinch with concern. James Whitaker moved closer, now just a few tables away. The veteran recognized the signs of a situation about to explode and didn't want to see anyone get hurt, including Ray, despite the man's deliberate provocation. "Hey, friend," James called out, with the deep, authoritative voice of someone who had once commanded. "I think you should leave them alone." Ray turned, annoyance evident. "Old man, this isn't your business." "When you harass a blind man and his guide dog, it becomes all of our business," James replied, unflinching. James's words caused several other customers to nod in agreement. Ray looked around, realizing the public was turning against him, but this only strengthened his resolve. Still, Ray seemed determined to test the limits. "Come on, big guy," Ray said with a forced laugh. "Are you as tough as you look?" This time, before the German Shepherd could react, Ray lightly tapped the side of Alex's chair, a move that caused Maximus to rise in one swift, firm motion. That gesture was the final straw for the animal. Maximus didn't charge, but his posture changed. He was now fully alert, his body tense like a bowstring ready to snap. The crowd around them began to murmur, and a few people raised their phones to capture the scene. Alex, sensing the change in Maximus's behavior, furrowed his brow. He ran his hand over the dog's neck, trying to calm him down, but now he knew something was wrong. "What's going on here?" he asked aloud, his expression worried. Ray just laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. He knew he was playing with fire, but seemed unable to back down in front of his friends in the crowd. "Nothing really," he replied, gesturing for Alex to relax. "We're just messing around." "Messing around?" Elena stepped forward, her voice filled with anger. "You're harassing my customer and causing a scene in my cafe. I've called the police." Ray whirled around, his face darkening. "You did what?" "She said she called the police," James Whitaker repeated, now standing right beside Elena. "And they'll be very interested in those motorcycles of yours. I noticed a few features that look less than legal." This made Marcus and Darius nervous. Both had records and didn't want trouble with the police. "Ray," Marcus whispered urgently, "we should go." But Ray, trapped in a situation of his own making, couldn't back down so easily. At that moment, a woman who had been sitting nearby stood up. "Hey, you need to stop this," she said firmly. "Leave the dog alone." Her voice echoed across the sidewalk, and for the first time, Ray hesitated. Embarrassment began to take over, and he looked around, realizing the disapproving stares. Maximus didn't move but kept staring at Ray, ready to react to any sign of danger. The tension still hung in the air, like a rope about to snap. Ray narrowed his eyes at the woman who confronted him, but said nothing. The crowd around them started to grow uneasy, exchanging glances between him, Maximus, and Alex, who now seemed even more confused. Feeling the discomfort rise, Ray took a step back, but it wasn't to retreat for good. He had something else in mind. "Relax, we're just having fun," he said dismissively, trying to salvage what was left of his image. But inside, he felt the need to assert his dominance. Maximus, on the other hand, remained still, observing every movement with surgical precision, as if reading the biker's next move. Alex tightened the leash on Maximus, murmuring, "Maximus, calm down. What's going on?" He couldn't see Ray's threatening stance, but he could feel the tension in the air. Maximus wasn't an ordinary dog. He had been trained to protect, and at that moment, he was in full alert mode. Alex trusted him completely, but the growing tension made him uneasy. The crowd around them seemed frozen with a heavy silence, making everything even more unsettling. In that tense moment, Elena's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, then looked at Ray with a satisfied smile. "The police will be here in 2 minutes," she announced, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. This sent Marcus into a panic. "Ray, I can't get arrested again. I'm still on probation." Darius also began to back away, looking toward their motorcycles. "We should leave right now." Ray was caught between fear of legal consequences and fear of losing face. In a decisive moment, his anger won out. Suddenly, Ray made an unexpected move. He pretended to back off, but in an impulsive act, he kicked one of the nearby chairs, pushing it toward Maximus. The sound of metal hitting the ground echoed down the street, and a few people gasped in surprise. Maximus reacted instantly, stepping to the side and dodging the chair with impressive agility. The dog growled more audibly now, his protective stance becoming even more evident. It was a clear warning that he would no longer tolerate any provocation. "Hey, stop!" the woman shouted again, this time with more authority. A few other people started speaking up, asking Ray to stop. He, however, seemed trapped in his own ego. "What's the problem? You've never seen someone play with a dog before," he said, trying to maintain a carefree attitude. But his hands were clenched, and it was clear he was no longer in control of the situation. Maximus stood firm, his eyes locked on Ray as if analyzing every movement, ready to act if necessary. Alex finally realized something serious was happening. He slowly stood up, his hand firmly gripping Maximus's leash. "Can someone tell me what's going on here?" he asked aloud, his concern now obvious. But before anyone could respond, Ray stepped forward, leaning toward Alex as if trying to intimidate him directly. The crowd held its breath, and Maximus, as if understanding the threat to his owner, lowered his head slightly, preparing to defend Alex at all costs. The tension reached its peak as Ray took another step toward Alex. He was so close now that his presence was oppressive, even to someone who couldn't see. "What's wrong, buddy? Hiding behind your dog?" Ray mocked with a bitter laugh that seemed to hide his own discomfort. Alex, on the other hand, remained calm, though his voice trembled slightly. "Maximus never hides me from anything," he replied, gripping the dog's leash tightly. "He's here to protect me, and it seems like he knows something I don't." Maximus stayed still, but the growl in his throat grew louder with every passing second. The crowd around them, once hesitant, was now starting to murmur louder, clearly uncomfortable with Ray's behavior. James Whitaker finally stood up and intervened. "Hey, this has gone too far. You should leave before something bad happens." But Ray, driven by pride and the pressure from his friends, ignored the advice. He looked at James as if he were just another obstacle, but the growing discomfort on his face began to show. Suddenly, the silence was broken by an unexpected sound. Maximus barked loudly, a deep and firm bark that made Ray instinctively step back. It was a sound that couldn't be ignored, and its meaning was clear. The dog was ready to act. The crowd reacted with surprise, some filming, others backing away. The energy shifted completely. Alex, noticing Maximus's bark, knew something serious was about to happen. "Maximus, it's okay. I'm fine," he said, trying to calm the German Shepherd. But Maximus kept his eyes locked on Ray, as if saying he didn't trust those words. Then, in a final attempt to save his image, Ray impulsively stepped forward, reaching out to push Alex by the shoulder. It was a quick move, but not fast enough to go unnoticed by Maximus. The German Shepherd reacted in the blink of an eye, positioning himself between Ray and Alex with a swift move that placed him directly between the biker and his owner. Maximus didn't attack but stood firm, his teeth slightly bared, a clear warning that this needed to end right there. The street fell into complete silence. Ray froze, unable to react, while Maximus's gaze seemed to pierce him. Alex, now aware that something very serious had just happened, lifted his head and said firmly, "I think it's best if you leave now." The crowd around them began to murmur, this time against Ray. He looked around, realizing he had lost control of the situation. Without saying another word, he slowly backed away, trying to hide his embarrassment. His friends followed him in silence, and within seconds the group vanished around the corner. The morning, which had started with the soft tones of routine, was now filled with murmurs and tension. Alex felt the air around him shift. Even without seeing, he could sense that the energy had changed. The sound of motorcycles in the distance faded, replaced by the muffled noise of people talking about what they had witnessed. Maximus, by his side, stayed alert, his body still tense. But there was something more, a subtle tremor in his front paws. Alex, feeling the vibration through the leash, crouched down and touched the fur of the German Shepherd. "Maximus, it's okay now, buddy," he murmured, trying to calm him down. But Maximus seemed to hesitate, his gaze still fixed on the spot where Ray had disappeared. It was as if he knew that man wasn't just a temporary threat, but a problem that could resurface. Alex, gently touching Maximus's snout, whispered, "You feel something I don't you?" These words, though simple, carried deep weight. They reflected the unwavering trust he had in his loyal companion. The crowd around them began to disperse slowly, but a few people stayed close, still curious. Elena approached their table, setting down a fresh cup of coffee. "This one's on the house," she said softly. "I'm so sorry about what happened." Alex smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Elena. It wasn't your fault." "Those guys come in sometimes," she explained, her voice lowering. "They've never caused trouble before, but there's always been something off about them, especially Ray. I should have asked them to leave sooner." "You couldn't have known," Alex reassured her, and Maximus handled it well. Elena looked at the German Shepherd with newfound respect. "He certainly did. I've never seen anything like it." The woman who had confronted Ray took a few steps toward Alex, a concerned look on her face. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice still trembling with adrenaline. Alex nodded, but the furrowed brows revealed the worry inside him. "I'm fine, but Maximus, he's never reacted like this before. He knows when something's wrong, and that worries me." The woman crouched down, observing Maximus closely. "This dog, he's not ordinary, is he?" Alex sighed, a mix of pride and melancholy on his face. "No, he was a canine, trained to protect, serve, and if necessary, sacrifice everything. But that was years ago. I thought he had left all that behind. Now he's my guide, my family." The woman looked into Maximus's eyes as if trying to decipher something only he knew. "Maybe he never forgot who he is," she replied, almost in a whisper. James Whitaker stepped closer. "Listen, son," he began, his voice deep and filled with wisdom. "Dogs like him have instincts that go beyond what we can understand. He didn't react like that by chance. You should trust him and maybe stay alert. That man, Ray, he didn't seem like the type to give up easily." The veteran's words resonated with Alex, who gently tightened Maximus's leash. The German Shepherd looked at him, his eyes expressing something words could never translate. The moment was interrupted by a distant sound, the rumble of engines. They were no closer, but they hadn't completely disappeared either. Alex took a deep breath, stroking Maximus's head. Maybe it's just my imagination, he thought, but the tremor in Maximus's body said otherwise. What he didn't know was that this incident was just the beginning of something much bigger. Something that would test not only Maximus's loyalty, but also Alex's strength to face the unexpected. James placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. I was a military dog handler for 12 years, he said quietly. I know that look in your dog's eyes. He's not just alert, he's anticipating. Here's my card. Call me if you need anything. Alex accepted the card, tucking it into his pocket. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. James, please, the veteran insisted, and I mean it about calling. Dogs like Maximus don't overreact. If he sensed something in that man, there was something to sense. Alex nodded, a chill running down his spine despite the warm morning sun. The tension seemed to have finally faded, but not for Maximus. Although he was now lying next to Alex, his breathing was still faster than normal, his eyes alert to every movement around them. Sensing the dog's restlessness, Alex decided it was time to leave the cafe. He grabbed the leash and stood up slowly, offering a nervous smile to the few people still nearby. Thanks for sticking around. I think Maximus and I need some fresh air, he said before starting to walk down the sidewalk. The walk back home was something Alex and Maximus did every day, but that morning each step felt laden with meaning. The silence was only broken by the sound of Maximus's paws on the pavement and the soft jingle of the leash. Alex couldn't see the world around him, but Maximus's behavior spoke louder than any sight could. He was tense, his posture signaling that he was on high alert. It was a subtle but constant reminder that something still wasn't right. When they arrived at Alex's small apartment, he unclipped the leash, allowing Maximus to roam freely around the space. You're acting strange today, buddy, Alex remarked as he fumbled around the kitchen counter for Maximus's water bowl. The German Shepherd moved slowly through the apartment, sniffing every corner as if conducting an inspection. Finally, he stopped by the door, sitting quietly but with his ears perked, listening for any sounds from outside. Alex noticed this, furrowing his brow. What's going on, Maximus? You never do this. Alex moved to the window, running his fingers along the familiar path across the wall. Though he couldn't see outside, he could feel the warm sunlight on his face. Is someone out there, boy? Is that what's bothering you? Maximus remained by the door, his posture rigid and alert. There was no barking, no growling, just an intense vigilance that spoke volumes. Alex reached for his phone on the side table, his fingers finding the familiar shape. Maybe I should call James, he murmured. He seemed to understand you better than I do right now. But before he could dial, Maximus suddenly relaxed, moving away from the door to lie at Alex's feet. The immediate danger, whatever it had been, seemed to have passed. Alex sighed with relief, though a lingering unease remained. As Alex sat on the couch trying to process the events of the morning, he began to remember the stories he'd heard about Maximus before adopting him. He knew Maximus had a background as a K9, but he'd never learned all the details. Maximus had served in tough cases where his ability to detect danger had saved lives, and now it seemed those instincts were returning. Are you trying to tell me something, boy? Alex asked, petting the dog's soft fur. Maximus only responded with a slight wag of his tail, but his eyes never left the door. Outside, the distant rumble of a motorcycle echoed again, almost imperceptible. Maximus raised his head, his whole body tensing once more. Alex didn't hear the sound, but he felt the dog's reaction. He placed a hand on Maximus's shoulder, as he always did to comfort him. Whatever it is, we're in this together, he said softly. Little did Alex know that promise would be tested very soon, in a way he could never have imagined. The evening came quietly, wrapping the small neighborhood in a blanket of calm. Alex sat at his modest dining table, carefully slicing an apple as Maximus rested by his side. The tension from earlier lingered in the room, an unspoken weight that neither Alex nor Maximus could ignore. Alex's fingers grazed Maximus's fur as he spoke, almost to himself. "Maybe I'm just overthinking this, huh, buddy?" he muttered. Maximus's ears twitched, his sharp eyes fixed on the front door, as though he anticipated something Alex could not see. Outside, the quiet was shattered by the distant hum of engines. At first faint, it grew louder, more distinct. Maximus immediately stood, his body rigid as he stared at the door. Alex, sensing the change, froze. "What is it, Maximus?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with concern. The engine stopped suddenly, followed by a heavy silence that pressed against the thin walls of the apartment. Alex reached for his phone, his fingers trembling slightly. "Stay calm," he whispered to himself, though his heart pounded in his chest. He quickly found James's card and dialed the number. After 3 rings, the veteran answered. "James Whitaker." "Mr. Whitaker, James," Alex corrected himself. "It's Alex Thorne from the café this morning. I think those men might be outside my apartment. Maximus is acting the same way he did earlier." "Where do you live?" James asked, his tone immediately serious. Alex gave him the address, his voice dropping to a whisper as the footsteps approached his door. "Stay on the line," James instructed. "I'm only 10 minutes away. I'm calling the police too." Moments later, a knock echoed through the apartment, sharp and deliberate. Maximus let out a low growl, positioning himself between Alex and the door. Alex hesitated before standing, his hand gripping Maximus's leash tightly. "Who is it?" he called out, his voice firm but wary. There was no immediate answer, only the sound of faint murmurs outside. Alex's pulse quickened. He could feel Maximus's tension through the leash, the dog's readiness to defend if necessary. "I'm not opening the door until you say who you are," Alex declared. Finally, a voice responded, deep and vaguely familiar. "Relax, man. It's just me, Ray." The words sent a shiver down Alex's spine. Maximus barked sharply, his growl deepening. Alex's grip tightened on the leash as he stepped back, creating more distance from the door. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice edged with suspicion. Ray's tone shifted, trying to sound casual, but the underlying menace was clear. "Just wanted to talk, man. No hard feelings from earlier, right?" Alex didn't reply immediately. His mind raced, weighing his options. Maximus, sensing the gravity of the moment, remained poised and alert. The silence stretched, and Alex could feel the weight of Ray's presence just beyond the door. "Listen," Ray continued, his voice taking on a more threatening edge. "We got off on the wrong foot. Your dog overreacted, and things got out of hand. I just want to clear the air." Alex's grip on the phone tightened. He knew James was listening to every word. "I don't think we have anything to discuss," Alex replied firmly. "Please leave." "That's not very neighborly," Ray said, his tone hardening. "Maybe I should come in and we can talk properly, man to man." The doorknob rattled and Maximus's growl became more intense. Alex could hear James's voice on the phone, telling him to stay away from the door and that help was on the way. "You need to leave," Alex finally said, his voice steady but resolute. The murmurs outside grew louder, followed by the sound of retreating footsteps. But Maximus didn't relax. Neither did Alex. Something about the encounter felt unfinished, like a storm gathering strength just beyond the horizon. The uneasy silence that followed Ray's departure was short-lived. Alex paced the living room, his fingers trailing lightly along the familiar contours of the furniture as he tried to calm his thoughts. Maximus, however, was restless. He moved to the window, his large frame tense as he sniffed the air and stared out into the night. "What is it, Maximus?" Alex asked, more to himself than the dog. The unease in his chest was growing, a gnawing certainty that Ray wasn't finished with whatever game he was playing. Minutes later, the sound of footsteps broke the quiet. They were muffled, deliberate, circling the perimeter of the apartment building. Maximus let out a sharp bark, his body coiled like a spring. Alex froze, his heart hammering in his chest. He reached for the phone on the counter, his fingers fumbling to dial 911. Stay calm, he whispered to himself, though every nerve in his body screamed otherwise. James? Alex said into the phone, his voice tight with fear. They're still here. I can hear them moving around outside. I'm 5 minutes out, James replied, the sound of his car engine audible in the background. The police are on their way too. Stay away from the windows and doors. The warning came too late. A loud crash shattered the silence as something heavy struck one of the windows. The glass didn't break, but the impact reverberated through the small apartment. They're trying to break in! Alex gasped into the phone. Maximus moved to stand by the door, his growl low and steady, a warning that reverberated through the small apartment. Alex connected with the emergency dispatcher, his voice shaking as he explained the situation. There's someone outside my apartment, he said, gripping Maximus's leash tightly as the dog's growls grew louder. I think they mean trouble. The dispatcher assured him that officers were on their way, but the minutes felt like hours. Outside, the footsteps grew closer, more deliberate. Then came the sound of something scraping against the window pane, a subtle, menacing noise that sent chills down Alex's spine. The scraping stopped abruptly, followed by a muffled curse from outside. Maximus barked again, this time louder, his body pressed against the door as though daring the intruder to come closer. Alex, his grip firm on Maximus's leash, backed into the corner of the room, his mind racing. He felt helpless, reliant on Maximus's instincts and the hope that help would arrive in time. They're coming, Maximus, he murmured, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. Just hold on. Finally, the faint wail of police sirens pierced the tense air. The footsteps outside ceased immediately, followed by the sound of someone running away. Maximus remained on high alert, his growl softening but not disappearing entirely. Alex exhaled shakily, gripping the phone as he whispered into the receiver. They're here. Thank you. Relief washed over him momentarily, but it was tinged with the realization that this wasn't over. Ray had crossed a line, and Alex knew he needed to prepare for whatever came next. The sirens grew louder, and soon there was a firm knock on the door. Maximus remained vigilant as Alex cautiously approached, his hand trailing along the wall for guidance. Police! Open up, please, came a steady voice from the other side. Alex unlocked the door, relief washing over him as two officers introduced themselves. Officer Rivera, a veteran with 15 years on the force, took immediate notice of Maximus's alert posture. That's quite a dog you've got there, he commented, his voice carrying a note of professional appreciation. He's former K9, Alex explained. He's been acting strange all day since an incident at Sunrise Café this morning. The second officer, Martinez, was already scanning the perimeter of the apartment. We found footprints outside your window, she reported, and what looks like tool marks on the frame. Someone was definitely trying to get in. Alex's stomach tightened. There was a man, Chuck, who harassed us at the cafe this morning. He showed up at my door about 20 minutes ago. Officer Rivera nodded, taking notes as Alex recounted the day's events in detail. Maximus stayed close to Alex, occasionally glancing toward the window as if expecting Chuck's return. We'll increase patrols in this area, Officer Rivera assured him. But Mr. Carter, I'd recommend staying somewhere else tonight if possible. This type of harassment often escalates. I appreciate the concern, but this is my home, Alex replied firmly. And Maximus wouldn't leave even if I wanted to. He's been on high alert since this morning. Officer Martinez knelt beside Maximus, studying him with professional interest. These K9s never really forget their training, she observed. His body language suggests he's anticipating a threat, not just responding to one. What do you mean? Alex asked. It means your dog thinks this guy is coming back, she explained, and in my experience, these animals are rarely wrong. After the officers departed, Alex double-checked all windows and doors before settling on the couch. Maximus pressed against his leg. The German Shepherd's ears remained perked, his body still tense despite the quiet that had settled over the apartment. "What is it about this guy that's got you so worked up, buddy?" Alex murmured, stroking Maximus's fur. "You've dealt with plenty of jerks before without getting this agitated." Maximus only whined softly in response, his attention fixed on the front door. Outside, the neighborhood had grown quiet, the evening wrapping around them like a deceptive blanket of calm. But beneath that calm, Alex could feel something brewing, a tension that radiated from Maximus and settled into his own bones. The clock on Alex's wall chimed 9 times. He ran his fingers over the timepiece, a specially designed tactile clock his sister had given him last Christmas. The evening was growing late, but sleep felt impossible with the lingering unease in the apartment. "Maybe some music would help," Alex suggested to Maximus, moving toward the small stereo system in the corner. He selected a jazz album, one of his favorites, hoping the familiar melodies might soothe both their nerves. As the gentle saxophone filled the room, Alex returned to the couch and attempted to relax. Maximus, however, remained alert, only his tail occasionally twitching in response to the music. "You know, when I first got you, they told me you were the calmest dog they'd ever trained," Alex reminisced, his fingers finding the soft spot behind Maximus's ears. "Said you'd transitioned from police work to guide dog duty so smoothly, it was like you were born for it. They never mentioned this side of you, the guardian who never really left the force." Maximus shifted slightly, leaning into Alex's touch but keeping his gaze fixed on the door. The loyalty in that simple gesture brought a lump to Alex's throat. Before Maximus, the years following his accident had been dark, filled with depression and isolation. The dog had changed everything, bringing not just independence but companionship that had become the cornerstone of Alex's life. "Whatever happens, we face it together," Alex promised softly. Alex's phone rang, startling them both. He fumbled for it, answering with a cautious, "Hello?" "Mr. Carter, this is Officer Rivera. We ran the description you gave us through our system. Your friend Chuck is actually Charles Donovan, and he's got quite a record, mostly bar fights and disturbing the peace. But there's something else you should know." Alex sat up straighter, his hand finding Maximus's neck for reassurance. "What is it?" 3 years ago, Donovan was arrested during a drug bust. The arrest involved a police K9, a German Shepherd. Donovan resisted and the dog took him down, left him with some nasty scars. He's made threats against the handler and the dog ever since. A chill ran down Alex's spine. "Officer, Maximus is a retired police K9. He worked narcotics before he was assigned to me as a guide dog." There was a pause on the line. "Mr. Carter, I'm going to send a patrol car back to your location right now. Don't open the door for anyone except us." "How soon can they get here?" Alex asked, his voice tightening as Maximus suddenly stood, ears forward and body rigid. 10 minutes at most," Rivera replied. "Is something happening?" "I don't know, but Maximus is acting like—" Alex stopped mid-sentence as the distinct sound of motorcycle engines rumbled in the distance, growing steadily louder. "They're coming back. I can hear motorcycles." "Stay on the line with me," Rivera instructed firmly. "Find a secure room in your apartment if you can, bathroom or bedroom with a locking door." Alex's hand tightened on the phone as the motorcycle engines cut abruptly, too close for comfort. "They're outside the building now." "Units are on the way," Rivera assured him. "ETA 7 minutes. 7 minutes. It might as well have been 7 hours. Alex knew from Maximus's increasingly agitated state that they might not have that long. "I need to get to my bedroom," Alex told Rivera, his free hand finding Maximus's harness for guidance. "It's at the back of the apartment, away from the main entrance." As they moved quickly through the apartment, Maximus suddenly stopped, his growl deepening as he turned toward the kitchen window. Alex froze, listening intently. The faint sound of scraping metal against glass confirmed his fears. Someone was trying to force the window open. "They're at the kitchen window," Alex whispered into the phone. "How many entrances does your apartment have?" Rivera asked urgently. Front door and fire escaped through the bedroom window, Alex replied, his heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear his own voice. Get to the bedroom, lock the door, and stay away from the window, Rivera instructed. Units are now 5 minutes out. As Alex hung up, the pieces fell into place. Chuck Charles Donovan hadn't chosen them randomly at the café. He had recognized Maximus and seized an opportunity for revenge. The thought made Alex's blood run cold. So that's why you've been so on edge, he whispered to Maximus. You remember him, don't you? Maximus's low growl was answer enough. The dog suddenly stood, his attention fixed on the window. Outside, the sound of motorcycles grew louder, then cut off abruptly. Alex's heart pounded as he reached for his phone again. They're back, he said to himself, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. Before he could complete the call, the sound of breaking glass shattered the silence. Maximus barked fiercely, positioning himself between Alex and the source of the noise, the kitchen window. The crash was followed by muffled curses and the sound of boots landing on the kitchen floor. Not just one person, multiple intruders. Alex could distinguish at least 2 different voices as they moved through his kitchen. Check the living room, a voice whispered harshly. Chuck's voice. I'll take the bedroom. Maximus's growl deepened, his body pressed against Alex's leg in the narrow hallway between rooms. They were caught in the open, neither in the bedroom nor the living room, with intruders approaching from both directions. Alex's mind raced. The bathroom door was just to his right, their only option for temporary shelter. With practiced precision born from years of navigating his apartment without sight, he slipped into the bathroom, Maximus following silently. He closed the door with agonizing slowness, wincing at the nearly imperceptible click of the lock. Inside the small bathroom, Alex pressed his ear to the door, listening to the footsteps in his home. Heavy boots moved through the living room, while a second set approached the bedroom. Nothing here, came a voice from the living room. Not Chuck's, but another man's. Check the bathroom, Chuck called from the direction of the bedroom. And hurry up. We're not here to steal his TV. Maximus's body tensed beside Alex, a tremor running through the dog's powerful frame. Not fear, Alex realized, but anticipation, the coiled readiness of a predator about to strike. Remember your training? Alex whispered, so softly it was barely a breath. Wait for it. The bathroom doorknob rattled. It's locked, the second man called out. Break it down, Chuck ordered, his voice closer now. Alex backed away from the door, positioning himself in the bathtub, the furthest point from the entrance. Maximus stood guard between Alex and the door, his growl now audible and unmistakably threatening. I think the dog's in there, the second man said, hesitation evident in his voice. I don't care if the whole damn K9 unit is in there, Chuck snarled. Break it down. A heavy thud shook the door as someone slammed against it. The aging lock wouldn't withstand many such impacts. Alex reached for anything he could use as a weapon, his hand finding only a shower caddy with shampoo bottles and his razor. Another slam against the door, and the frame began to splinter. Maximus, Alex whispered, his decision made. Protect. The single command transformed the dog. Maximus's stance widened, his growl deepening to a frequency that seemed to vibrate the very air around them. This was no longer a retired guide dog. This was the highly trained police K9 re-emerging in the moment of greatest need. A final crash, and the bathroom door flew open. Hello, dog man, Chuck's voice called, slurred with what could only be alcohol or something stronger. Thought I'd drop by for a proper visit this time. Alex froze, his mind racing. The police were on their way, but not soon enough. He and Maximus were trapped with a man bent on revenge. What do you want, Chuck? Alex called out, trying to keep his voice steady. Heavy footsteps approached from the doorway. What do I want? I want to settle a score with your mutt there. See, we've met before, though you wouldn't know it. Maximus's growl deepened, his body coiled like a spring. Alex could feel the tension radiating from the dog, a controlled fury waiting to be unleashed. That dog ruined my life, Chuck continued, his voice growing closer. Got me 3 years in prison, cost me my job, my girl, left me with scars I see every morning in the mirror. And now here he is, playing house pet like he never tore my arm open. You were breaking the law, Alex replied, struggling to maintain his composure. Maximus was doing his job. His job, Chuck spat the words. His job was to rip my flesh apart? To make me scream in front of my crew? Do you know what that did to my reputation? A second voice spoke from behind Chuck. Come on, man, let's just do this and get out. The neighbors probably heard us break in. Shut up, Marcus, Chuck snapped. I've waited 3 years for this. I'm going to enjoy it. The bathroom's confined space filled with the scent of leather, alcohol, and something chemical that made Alex's nostrils burn. He could sense Chuck's proximity, barely 2 feet away, with only Maximus between them. The police are on their way, Alex warned, edging further back against the tub. Whatever you're planning, it's not too late to walk away. Chuck laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Always the same line. The police are coming, but they're never fast enough, are they? That's why they need dogs to do the dirty work. Chuck, seriously, I hear sirens, Marcus insisted, his voice edged with panic. We need to go. Not until I finish what I came for, Chuck replied, his voice suddenly calmer, more focused. I've thought about this moment for years, dreamed about it in my cell. Alex heard the distinctive click of a switchblade opening. Maximus's bark became more urgent, more commanding. You don't want to do this, Chuck, Alex warned, his back now pressed against the cold porcelain of the tub. Maximus isn't just a pet. He's still every bit the police dog he was when you met him. Let's test that theory, Chuck snarled. In the narrow confines of the bathroom, what happened next was chaos distilled to its purest form. Alex heard Chuck's sudden lunge, followed by Maximus's explosive response, a blur of motion that translated into sounds of struggle, growls, shouts, and the clatter of the knife hitting the tile floor. Jesus Christ, Marcus yelled from the doorway. He's going to kill him! The bathroom echoed with Chuck's screams and Maximus's fierce growls. Something crashed into the shower curtain, sending it and the rod clattering down around Alex. He pressed himself against the wall, helpless without his sight, heart racing as the violent struggle continued mere feet away. Get him off me, Chuck screamed, his voice pitched high with pain and fear. Get this fucking dog off me. I'm not touching that beast, Marcus replied, his voice already retreating. This is your fight, man. Footsteps pounded away, Marcus abandoning his friend to save himself. The sounds of struggle continued, Chuck's curses turning to pleas as Maximus maintained his hold. Call him off, Chuck gasped. Please call him off. Alex remained frozen, torn between self-preservation and mercy. Maximus was doing exactly what he'd been trained to do, neutralize a threat without lethal force. But how long should he let it continue? The wail of sirens grew suddenly louder, no longer in the distance but directly outside the building. Help had arrived. Maximus! Alex called, panic rising in his throat. A yelp of pain cut through the room, but whether from man or dog, Alex couldn't tell. Then came a crash as something heavy hit the floor. You son of a... Chuck's voice cut off in a gurgle. The front door suddenly vibrated as someone pounded on it from outside. Police! Open up! In here! Alex shouted, his voice cracking with strain. Bathroom! The apartment filled with the sound of boots as officers stormed in, following the sounds of struggle. In seconds, the small bathroom was crowded with bodies and voices. Police, don't move! Suspect is down. Dog has him pinned. He's got a knife. Get the dog off him. Maximus, release! Alex called out, his voice breaking with emotion. Release, boy! A moment of tense silence followed, then the metallic click of handcuffs closing. An officer gently took Alex's arm, helping him navigate around the debris of the shattered bathroom door. Your dog is fine, Mr. Carter, she assured him, her voice professional but kind. He's got a small cut on his shoulder, but nothing serious. Donovan is being secured now. Is he badly hurt? Alex asked, concern coloring his voice despite everything. Bite wounds to his arm and shoulder, the officer replied. Nothing life-threatening. Your dog showed remarkable restraint. He could have done much worse. Relief washed over Alex in a wave so powerful his knees nearly buckled. Can I go to him? To Maximus? The officer guided him carefully around the furniture that had been displaced during the struggle. Right here, she said, placing his hand on the familiar fur. Maximus whined softly as Alex knelt beside him, running his hands over the dog's body to assure himself that the injury was indeed minor. The German shepherd pressed against him, his posture still protective, despite the danger having passed. You saved my life again, didn't you? Alex whispered, wrapping his arms around Maximus's neck. Just like you've been doing since the day we met. From across the room, Alex could hear Chuck still ranting as officers escorted him out. That dog is a menace, Chuck shouted, his voice strained with pain. He should be put down. He attacked me 3 years ago, and he attacked me again tonight. After you broke into Mr. Carter's apartment with a knife, Officer Rivera countered dryly. Interesting definition of attack you've got there. I have rights, Chuck continued to protest as his voice faded down the hallway. That animal? The closing of the elevator doors mercifully cut off the rest of his tirade. We're going to need to take your statement, Mr. Carter, Officer Rivera said, returning to Alex's side, and get your dog checked out by a vet. But I have to say, in 15 years on the force, I've never seen a retired K9 perform so perfectly. He neutralized the threat without causing serious injury. Textbook police work. Alex smiled, his fingers still buried in Maximus's fur. He never forgot his training. He was just waiting for the moment when it mattered most. We'll need to document everything, Rivera continued. The break-in, the assault attempt, and your dog's response. Would you be comfortable coming down to the station tomorrow morning? Of course, Alex agreed, still kneeling beside Maximus. Whatever you need. In the meantime, we'll have an officer stationed outside your building tonight, Rivera added. Donovan's friend fled the scene, but we have a description. We'll find him. As the officers began processing the scene, taking photographs and collecting evidence, Alex remained on the floor with Maximus, the bond between them stronger than ever. The apartment that had always been his sanctuary now felt violated, its peaceful atmosphere shattered by violence. But amid the chaos and destruction, one thing remained unbreakable: the connection between a man and the dog who had once again proven to be his guardian. Officer Rivera, Alex called as the policeman prepared to leave. Can you tell me something? How did Maximus end up as a guide dog after his police career? It seems like such a specific transition. Rivera paused, considering the question. I can't speak to your dog specifically, but I know the program. Not all canines are suitable for civilian adoption after retirement. Some are too aggressive, too specialized in their training. But the ones with the right temperament, especially the ones who show both protective instincts and gentleness, they sometimes get selected for service dog training. It's rare, but when it works, you get partnerships like yours. Alex nodded, absorbing this information. So he was special even among police dogs. Must have been, Rivera agreed, and tonight proved why. He didn't just protect you, he did it with exactly the right amount of force. That's not just training, that's intelligence and judgment. After the officers finally departed, promising to return in the morning, Alex surveyed the damage to his apartment as best he could. The bathroom door was destroyed, the kitchen window broken, and various items knocked over in the struggle. But material things could be replaced. What mattered was that they had survived. And more than survived, they had prevailed. We should clean that cut, Alex told Maximus, moving toward the first aid kit he kept in the kitchen. The veterinarian who had been called to the scene had already treated the wound. But Alex wanted to check it himself, needing the tactile reassurance that Maximus was truly okay. As he gently cleaned the small cut on Maximus's shoulder, Alex reflected on how their relationship had evolved in just one day. This morning, Maximus had been his faithful guide and companion. Tonight, he had revealed himself as a protector of extraordinary capability and courage. "You're going to get extra treats for at least a month," Alex promised, applying the antibiotic ointment the vet had left. "Maybe 2 months." Maximus responded with a soft whine, pressing his head against Alex's chest in a gesture that seemed to say, "I was just doing my job." As the night progressed and the chaos of police activity finally began to wind down, Alex sat on his couch, Maximus's head heavy on his lap. The small cut on the dog's shoulder had been cleaned and bandaged by a veterinarian who had been called to the scene, and the officers had finally departed after taking detailed statements. "Officer Rivera says they found Chuck's records," Alex told Maximus, stroking behind his ears. "You were the K-9 who helped arrest him during a major drug bust in 2020. He resisted, and you had to take him down. He's been in and out of prison since then, always talking about getting revenge on the dog who ruined his life." Maximus sighed contentedly, his body finally relaxed after hours of tension. "You knew who he was the moment you smelled him at the cafe, didn't you?" Alex continued. "That's why you were so alert. You weren't just protecting me from a random jerk. You were protecting me from someone you knew was dangerous." The German Shepherd shifted slightly, pressing closer to Alex's side. "The officer said Chuck will be going away for a long time. Breaking and entering, attempted assault with a deadly weapon, violating parole, the list goes on." Alex smiled faintly. "You made sure of that, didn't you?" Maximus's tail thumped softly against the couch cushions, perhaps the most relaxed gesture he'd shown all day. The immediate danger had passed, and the dog seemed to sense that the threat Chuck posed had been neutralized for good this time. "I wonder how many other stories you have," Alex mused, his fingers tracing the outline of Maximus's ear. "How many other bad guys you've taken down? How many lives you've saved? They gave me your service record when I adopted you, but it was just dates and statistics. Nothing about the real work you did." Maximus yawned, his massive jaws opening wide before he settled his head more comfortably on Alex's lap. "Maybe tomorrow we'll skip the cafe," Alex suggested. "Find a nice quiet park instead. I think we both deserve a peaceful day after all this excitement." The German Shepherd's steady breathing suggested he was finally drifting towards sleep, the vigilance of the past 18 hours giving way to well-earned rest. Alex leaned his head back against the couch, his own exhaustion catching up with him. The adrenaline that had sustained him through the ordeal was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. But beneath the fatigue was something else, a profound sense of security that came from knowing just how far Maximus would go to protect him. "We're quite the team, aren't we?" Alex whispered, his own eyes growing heavy. The blind man and his not-so-ordinary guide dog. As sleep began to claim him, Alex's thoughts drifted to the future. Tomorrow would bring police statements, repairs to his apartment, and probably some unwanted attention from neighbors curious about the night's events. But it would also bring a new chapter in his relationship with Maximus, one built on an even deeper understanding of the extraordinary bond they shared. In the quiet hours before dawn, as both man and dog slept on the living room couch, a gentle rain began to fall outside, washing away the last traces of footprints beneath the kitchen window. The neighborhood returned to its peaceful rhythm, unaware of the drama that had unfolded within the modest apartment. But inside, something had been transformed. A partnership already strong had been tempered in the fire of danger, emerging unbreakable. As the night deepened around them, Alex felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. Maximus had come into his life as a guide after retiring from police work, but tonight had proven that some instincts never fade. The dog had recognized a threat from their past and had stood ready to face it, protecting Alex at all costs. "Zeus would have been proud of the name I gave you," Alex murmured as Maximus drifted to sleep beside him. "Guardian, protector, loyal to the end. I couldn't ask for a better partner." Outside, the neighborhood had returned to its peaceful state, unaware of the drama that had unfolded within the modest apartment. But inside, the bond between man and dog had been forged anew in the fire of danger, emerging stronger and more profound than ever before. For Maximus was more than a guide dog, more than a former canine. He was a guardian in the truest sense, one who recognized threats others couldn't see, who stood firm when danger approached, and who would always, always protect what mattered most. And as dawn approached, bringing with it the promise of a new day, Alex knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges life might bring, he would face them with Maximus by his side. His eyes in the darkness, his shield against harm, and his most faithful friend. The morning sun cast long shadows across Riverside Park as Alex and Maximus followed their now familiar weekend route. The German Shepherd moved with confident purpose, guiding Alex along the winding path with practiced ease. Their steps were synchronized, the result of countless hours spent together, navigating both the physical world and the emotional aftermath of that night 6 months ago. "Good morning, Alex." "Maximus," called a cheerful voice from nearby. Alex turned toward the sound, smiling as he recognized Elena Rodriguez, the owner of Sunrise Café. After the incident, he had avoided the cafe for weeks, but Elena had personally visited his apartment, bringing coffee and pastries and insisting that he shouldn't let one bad experience rob him of his morning routine. "Elena, how are you?" Alex greeted her warmly. "Busy as always," she replied, falling into step beside them. "The cafe's packed this morning. Weekend crowd. But I saw you two walking and thought I'd say hello." She paused, then added, "Maximus looks particularly handsome today." "New collar?" Alex nodded. "It arrived yesterday. Special order. It has his name and mine embossed on the inside, along with his service credentials." "Very distinguished," Elena commented. "Fitting for a local hero." Alex chuckled softly. "He still gets recognized, you know. People come up to us all the time, asking if he's that dog from the news." The story had indeed made the local news, and then national headlines. "Retired police K9 protects blind owner from vengeful criminal" had captured the public's imagination. For a few weeks, reporters had called constantly, and well-wishers had left treats and toys at Alex's door. The attention had eventually faded, but Maximus's reputation remained. "How's the new security system working out?" Elena asked as they reached a bench overlooking the river. "It's good, Alex replied, taking a seat while Maximus settled at his feet. "Probably overkill, but it helps me sleep at night. Motion sensors, reinforced windows, direct line to the police station, the whole package." The system had been a gift from the local police department, installed by officers who had been moved by Maximus's actions. Chuck Donovan had been sentenced to 15 years for the break-in and attempted assault, his previous record and the premeditated nature of the attack resulting in the maximum penalty. His accomplice Marcus had been caught 3 days later and had received a lesser sentence in exchange for testimony against Chuck. "And the nightmares?" Elena asked gently. She was one of the few people Alex had confided in about the psychological aftermath of the attack. "Better," Alex admitted. "Not gone completely, but better. Dr. Reeves says that's normal. Trauma takes time to process. Maximus still sleeps by the bedroom door, though. Not at the foot of the bed like he used to." Elena nodded understandingly. Some habits are hard to break, especially when they were born from protecting someone you love. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the river flow past and the distant sounds of children playing in the park. Maximus remained alert but relaxed, his ears occasionally twitching at interesting sounds, but his body language calm and content. "Oh, I almost forgot," Elena said suddenly. "There's going to be a ceremony next month. The mayor wants to present Maximus with some kind of civilian heroism award. The police chief called the cafe looking for you. Apparently, they couldn't reach you directly." Alex groaned softly. "I changed my number after the third interview request. I should give the new one to the department." "You should go," Elena encouraged. "Not for the publicity, but for Maximus. He deserves the recognition, doesn't he?" Alex reached down to stroke Maximus's head, feeling the soft fur beneath his fingers. "Yes, he does." Though I'm not sure he cares about medals and certificates. Maybe not, Elena agreed with a laugh. But it matters that people understand what he did, what he represents. In a world where it's easy to feel cynical, stories like yours remind people that loyalty and courage still exist. After Elena left to return to her café, Alex remained on the bench, contemplating her words. Maximus had shifted position to lean against his leg, a warm, solid presence that had become the center of Alex's world. "What do you think, boy?" Alex asked softly. "Should we go accept this award? Stand up in front of a bunch of strangers and let them take our picture?" Maximus responded by pressing his head more firmly against Alex's knee. "I'll take that as a yes," Alex chuckled, "but only because you've earned it, and because maybe, just maybe, someone will hear our story and understand what it means to find the perfect partner. Someone who sees you at your most vulnerable and still stands beside you, no matter what comes." As they resumed their walk, Alex reflected on how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. His life had been upended by violence, then pieced back together by the support of his community and the unwavering loyalty of his dog. The incident had left its mark on both of them. A small scar on Maximus's shoulder, invisible beneath his fur, and the less visible scars that Alex carried in his mind. But they had survived together, and in that survival, they had discovered something profound about the bond they shared. It wasn't just about guidance or protection or companionship, though it encompassed all those things. It was about two beings who had found in each other exactly what they needed: purpose, security, and unconditional acceptance. "Come on, Maximus," Alex said, his voice full of quiet contentment. "Let's go home." The German Shepherd rose immediately, falling into perfect position at Alex's side. Together they turned toward home, their footsteps aligned, their futures intertwined, guardian and guarded, moving through the world as one.